Hi everyone, welcome to Removing Roadblocks for Getting Published. Our speaker today is Lisa Crayton, who will present The Focused Writer, or What's It All About. Lisa is a creative, versatile communicator with more than 30 years experience and exemplary communication skills. Her extensive background includes corporate publications management, ghostwriting, TV and radio interviewing, publicity, and e-publishing. A freelance editor, she has edited magazines and books and presently serves as a freelance editor with Harambee Press, which is part of Lighthouse Publishing of the Carolinas. That imprint is dedicated to raising up voices of color. An award-winning freelance writer, she has written articles, devotionals, Bible study guides, columns, essays, and other content. The author of I Want to Teach My Teen About Money Management, Crayton has served as a contributing author for several other nonfiction books. Her 12 nonfiction children books encompass biographies, literary criticism, and youth guidance topics. She's also a co-author of a six-book series. A gifted speaker with years of experience in church leadership roles, she teaches at writers' conferences, including, of course, our own conferences. And as a partner with Writing for Your Life, Lisa offers several editorial and consulting services. Check out her webpage on our website to learn more. So after Lisa's presentation, you can ask questions by typing them into the Q&A feature on the webinar screen. So with that, I'll hand it over to you, Lisa.
Thank you, Brian. I'm so excited to be here. Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining us. I hope that this presentation will help you to be more focused in your writing, to look at your writing from a different way, and to realize that the clearer and the more focused your manuscripts are, the better the opportunities that come to you, but also the better the chance of getting published. So I'm going to share my presentation with you, so we'll work through the PowerPoint. And please, I welcome questions. Again, this is Lisa Crayton with The Focused Writer. So again, we're talking about being focused as a writer and focusing our manuscripts, or I like to say, what's it all about? The worst thing that can happen when you are reading something, whether as an editor or as a first reader, or even after, unfortunately, you either purchased a magazine or went to a website or a book, and you read something is like, what is this all about? And it's so frustrating. So I'm hoping to help you to avoid that and to better focus your writing. So why this webinar? So opportunities abound to publish almost anything that you would like to publish, whether that's articles or Bible studies, essays, devotionals, novellas, short stories, nonfiction books. I mean, there's no limit. Book chapters, for example, novellas, and there's more. So to the right of my screen on this slide, these are some of the things that I've done. And so these are some of my more recent kids' books. But also down here, this Household Money Organizer, for example, I had a couple of small chapters in that. Turn Your Eyes Upon Jesus, I had 30 devotionals. The Quiet Hour is a great market for freelancers looking to write devotionals. Wonderful editor to work with. So these are some of the opportunities that abound when your writing is focused. Editors can know what you're writing, and they're excited about helping you get your material in print. So why this webinar? Because when you focus your writing, opportunities abound. And they exist, again, because readers, editors, and publishers, they seek focused writing. They need focused writing. And they are hungry for clearly focused material. The benefits of focusing your manuscripts, it invites reading. There's, again, for me as a first reader and as an editor, there's nothing like having an unfocused manuscript, and it just makes me want to stop reading. It's like, oh, what is this? And it's also, it helps with clarity. I understand what I'm reading. I'm more inclined to keep reading. A focused manuscript will include timeless themes that people can relate to. It's opportune and timely based on what's happening in the economy or in the Christian environment. If you're a Christian, what's happening with children or parenting, and it's relatable. Your readers can relate to this focused manuscript, and it sells. Again, focused manuscript sells. It yields results. Editors and readers respond positively to your manuscripts. So the roadblock we're talking about is unfocused manuscripts. They're difficult to pitch, and they're difficult to get published. And as an editor, again, they're difficult to read. As a reader, they're difficult to read. One of the things I do, I offer is a service where I will actually help people understand what the problems are in their manuscripts and how to bring them more into focus. And some of those things I'll share with you today. So how do you overcome this roadblock of having this manuscript? You think it's wonderful. It makes sense to you. How did you end here? How did you end at a stop point in your road to publication? And it's because you did not focus your manuscript. And what you need to now do is step back and honestly identify or overcome the structural roadblocks inherent in your unfocused manuscripts, or the barriers that are there. By doing so, it'll improve the focus of the manuscript, it'll improve the readability and the marketability. Saying the same thing over and over again. It has to be in focus. It has to be readable in order to be marketable. Focused writing equals a vehicle of communication. Again, it's easy to read, it's easy to understand. If you're writing for the Christian market, it reflects the light of Jesus. It brings those spiritual truths to light in a way people can understand, where they're not shaking their head and saying, the Bible doesn't say that. If you're writing for non-believers, it's so focused that non-believers aren't saying, this person is being so preachy, they brought in a different topic, or they're handling in a way that's not appropriate for my readership. Again, if you're writing for a Christian market, it connects people to God because it's focused, it's clear, it's biblical, I'm connected. But focused writing also, it informs, it heals, it entertains, meaning it achieves whatever purpose you had for that manuscript. So if you was writing a how-to article, if you was writing an essay on parenting, when that piece of writing is so focused, then it's informing, it's healing, it's entertaining, it's doing what I, the reader, needs it done, but more so what you, the writer, needs to do. Ask yourself, what is my manuscript really about? What is your manuscript really about? Every writer must answer this key question to write a clear, focused manuscript. If it takes you 2 paragraphs, if it takes you 5 minutes, if it takes you half an hour to explain what your manuscript is about, and you're the writer, imagine what the reader is going to feel like. Like, why do I have to read 30 pages in order to know what this manuscript is about? And you can't rely on the title of the book, and you can't rely on the back cover of a book, or you can't rely about a little blurb that might be a little teaser in a magazine in order for readers to know what your manuscript is about. Those do help, but you have to know what your manuscript is about. I've encountered working with unfocused manuscripts as an editor. Because I do provide freelance editing, as a writing mentor when I was with the Jerry Jenkins Christian Writers Guild for 10 years, as a writer myself, having to deal with my own manuscripts and have to ask myself, what am I really saying? Is this meeting the goals? Or for an editor to come back and say, something in here is not really focused, I don't understand it. And so I have a lot of experience dealing with unfocused manuscripts. One of my former mentoring students with the Guild had a comment on Facebook a couple of years ago, and she says she always remembered that I would put on her manuscript my feedback. At points there would be times when I would say, huh? Because I was so confused. I didn't even know how to ask a question about what I just read. I did not understand it. So I would just put, huh? Like, or just a lot of question marks. What is this about? And so we have to ask ourselves that in order to clearly focus our manuscript. Ask yourself, what is it really about? And can you tell me whether that article, that devotional, that book, that novella, can you tell me in one word what it's about? Seriously, just one word. Can you tell me in one sentence? And not a long sentence that wraps 3 pages, like a one sentence. Can you tell me in a paragraph? What's it all about? If you can do any of those or all of those, chances are your manuscript is focused or is leaning toward being focused. But ask yourself, what is it all about? A secondary question you need to ask is, in order to focus your writing and to find out like why are you having problems, or why are readers having problems with it? Why did I write this? So if I'm writing an article for a parenting magazine, and I wrote it to, for example, I wrote a article about mommy fears. And it was an assigned article from a magazine. I had to talk about some of the fears I faced as a mom. So why did I write this? Obviously not just to spill my guts. I wrote it to encourage moms and parents who are having trouble with the fears related to rearing their children. Why did I write this piece? Who's it for? That was clear from what I just told you. I already know because I already had an assigned piece. But if I had just started writing that article, I just got this great idea, maybe my son had did something funny or I remembered something, who am I writing for? Is it for parents? Do I want to write it for students as he's a college student? Do I want to write it for church leadership? Perhaps I'm writing an article about youth ministry, which is a heart of mine. So who's it for? And why should people care? Why should I as a reader care about this manuscript that you're presenting me? Why should I get a magazine, for example, and there are 20 articles in it? Why should I care about reading yours? If I'm on a website or a blog and it has all these contributing writers, why should I care about your piece? What is it that is so focused that's going to draw me in and say, hey, Lisa, come read me. This is a focused piece. So ask yourself, why should people care? Why should people read? And why should people buy? It's the benefits to the readers. And we have to be honest. It's not because, ooh, I'm just such a great writer and I wrote this piece and, wow. No, that's not going to get people to care. That's not going to get people to read or to buy. You have to speak of it in terms of benefits. My article on fear was why should parents care? Because it's going to help them identify and address their real concerns, but it's also going to help them to realize they're not alone. They're not the only ones dealing with this thorny issue. And then how is it different? This particular question is going to help you as you go through your entire manuscript, whether that's a 1,000-word article, 500-word article, 250-word devotional. Why is this piece of writing different than something else I could write, or is different from something else perhaps someone else in that devotional magazine wrote? And the reason that's important is because, again, it's going to help me make it very clearly focused. My article on fear is different because I'm speaking to parents and I'm sharing stuff, encouragement that can help them with kids under age 10, for example. How is it different? Let's look at your entire manuscript. Let's go through it and say, how is it different? Maybe we have to make it different. Devotionals, if you love devotionals or you're interested in writing devotionals, that's one of the pet peeves of editors, is that they get a lot of submissions on common or very popular scriptures, but it's no different than anything else. Like, we already heard that. So like you hear a sermon and it's like, oh, I heard that slant on that sermon 5,000 times, and maybe 4,000 you really needed it, but there's 1,000 that you really needed something different on that same scripture. So how is it different? Those are questions you can ask to help yourself. So what are some of the structural roadblocks, or I like to say barriers, to your focus piece? You're going to have, in that manuscript, there will be weak building blocks. There will be unfocused themes. There will be an unclear audience, what I just shared a little bit about, ineffective stories, perhaps ineffective research, if that's applicable, and often, usually, ineffective revision. So let's break down some of that so that we can help you focus your writing. Weak building blocks. Some of the common content issues that appear and cause this barrier to clarity in your writing are found in your sentences, in your paragraphs, your beginnings, your middles, and your endings. For example, you're writing an article, or you're writing a book or a devotional or whatever, maybe a novel, and your beginning is so unfocused that people really don't understand what this is about. Now, a novel and novella may be a little different because you have a little bit more time to build your story world. But, for example, there are type genres in fiction where the action has to start right away. It has to be in the beginning. It has to be focused. And if it's not there, then you lose your reader. So look at your beginnings, look at your middles, and look at your endings. And analyze the voice. Is it what you really want to say? Analyze the structure. Does it make sense? For example, an article particularly can go from A to Z in presenting your content, or it can go from Z to A. For example, if I'm writing something about myself, I can talk about, I can start chronological. This happened in 1981 and these 5 things happened. Or I can get to the present. This is where I'm at in 2019, and I can back out, which is reverse chronological order. Is your structure the best one for the material that you're presenting? Oftentimes, it's not. You can probably rework some things to get a more clear focus and to get that structure to be sturdier and more better to help your readers. Your themes that are in your manuscript, are they good? Are they bad? They're ugly? Are they relevant? And the promises made. Normally when we write anything, there's an inherent promise in your writing. If you're writing an article, if you pitched it to an editor, you told that editor, I'm going to talk about these 3 things, or my article is going to help readers do X, Y, and Z. Look at your structure, look at your manuscript. Did you really fulfill those promises? That is usually a barrier to getting published. You want to look at those promises that you made. Unfocused themes. A theme is not just another fancy word of saying the subject or the topic. What is this about? In an article, it has to be clear, it has to be well developed, it has to be quick. In a book, what sometimes happens is that you have all of these pages, whether it's a 50-page, 100-page, whatever number of pages, you have all of these pages to present your topic, and sometimes your theme is just not clear. So let's ask ourselves, it's the main idea, it's the overall point of your manuscript, did I make it well? It has to be clear in every paragraph. It has to be clear in every chapter. And how do you do that is to stay on topic. Have you ever read anything, particularly nonfiction, and you're reading it and you're like, what? Like, this doesn't even relate to what I'm reading. That's because the writer may have had some great thought and some, went on this rabbit trail and it stayed in the manuscript. Or in fiction, it could be something that is like, this is not on topic. They were just over here. Now they're over here, or they switched up, and you lost me. You brought me out. In the fiction world, we call it bringing it out of the story world. You thrust that person out, so now they're like, I just don't understand. I think about movies, for example, when oftentimes I got to be honest, I need someone to interpret movies. So I can't go to a superhero movie and just understand it because I just get so lost. So if I'm watching it by myself, I'm going to have a ton of questions and they are unanswered. But if I'm watching it with someone else, particularly if I'm watching something with my son, I'm always stopping like, what's that about? And what does that mean? And that doesn't make sense. But he can tell me why it makes sense. And often when you're working with writers as I do, and I go back with them and say, hey, this doesn't make sense, or it doesn't make sense here. Why is it here? And often writers can tell me really clearly why they put it there, how it relates. But there's no transitional sentence, there's no transitional paragraph, there's no transitional word that links these ideas to make me know that they're still on topic and they're still on theme. And so you just need to look at that when you look at your writing. So I'm saying here that each manuscript should have one main theme, but it may have sub-themes. This is really important in devotionals. A lot of times writers want to put 5 different scriptures and 5 different ideas in a 200-word devotional, and it just doesn't work. So devotionals are really hard to write because they're so short, but it also happens in articles and books. And so you have to have a main theme. So I'll give you an example here. So I'm writing a book, I'm writing an article, Teaching Kids Money Management is the main theme, as the book that I wrote some years ago for Christian parents of teens. So I want to teach kids money management is the focus. But my sub-theme is every teen needs to have or know 4 tools to manage money well. So every paragraph or every chapter, depending if it was a book or article, will tackle one of those tools. And how readers can teach to teens, because the main theme is teaching kids. I'm sorry, let me rephrase that. So the sub-theme is every teams need to know 4 tools to manage money, but every chapter or every paragraph now has to share one of those tools. To be very clear, you don't put all 4 of those tools in the same paragraph. You don't, and then just every paragraph you're talking about those 4 tools. That's very confusing. Take a paragraph, take a chapter, devote it to that sub-theme, but remember, it's teaching kids about it. So it has to be, how can that parent now teach that teen this important tool? So just make it very clear and make it very focused. And I'm laughing because even as I was writing this presentation, I was realizing that I was confusing myself. I was like, okay, I need to write a clear presentation on being clear. You just have to stay in a mode to get your writing to be clear. So one of the barriers to writing well, as I mentioned, is an unclear audience. And you have to ask yourself, who are you writing for or to? It's better to be writing for than to, because it's versus preachy writing as opposed to I'm a sojourner, I have the same problem, I've been in the same boat, so I'm bringing you along. But anyway, who's you writing for? Do you have a gender in mind, an age, a race, a marital status, location, etc.? You need to have that clear as you write, so that as you revise, you can make sure that the audience is clear every time you shift from a paragraph, a chapter, etc. So I want to talk about stories. One thing that's important, even for nonfiction, good stories. Every manuscript needs good stories. Even devotionals, they call them vignettes. It may only be a couple of sentences, but it has to be a good story. So good stories make manuscripts, and they should be relevant, appropriate, universal, relatable, brief. That is one of my pet peeves, is to go for 10 pages on a story where you've brought me into the story to share how it relates to your theme or something that you just wrote. And now I'm 10 pages and I have no idea what you said before because this story went on forever. Let's keep our stories brief. They have to be interesting. They have to enhance the pace. And that happens when your manuscript moves along, when that story is shorter. You want to draw readers into fiction and nonfiction. That's the benefit of using good stories. And it makes the theme relatable. And again, there's no finger pointing. But bad stories will break your manuscripts. They're too long. They're boring. And sometimes the only reason they're boring is because it's too long. It's taking you an hour to tell me this 5-minute story, or, it's taking you an hour to tell a 2-minute joke. So it's boring. Look at that, revise. It's off topic. Like, why did you tell me this story that has nothing to do with what you're writing about? If it has to do with it, make that clear. And it's random. Like, why did you put this here? Sometimes I say these things when I'm revising manuscripts, and I don't put all these nice notes in the manuscripts unless I think a writer can handle it, and it's based on my relationship with them. But it's like, why did you put this there? This is so random. Like, no, let's take that out. So in my opinion, and every editor may not agree, it's better no stories in your manuscript than a bad story. And since most manuscripts need stories, you need to write better stories, basically. So research, again, is one of those barriers that I said in making your manuscript clear. And this is one of my pet peeves. I find that a lot of manuscripts fall down when it comes to research. So let me just share what I mean. Effective research will make your manuscript, for example, it's relevant, it's appropriate, it's real, it's verifiable, it's recent, it's mixed, maybe primary and secondary sources, is limited. I should not be reading your book and the entire book is research based on someone else. Like, you have all of these quotes, you have all of this information, all of this research, but no original writing. And I know some of you will disagree, particularly those who are in ministry and they write theological content. You might be sharing information about research, and that's fine, but I don't want to read the research. I can go read the research for myself. Your manuscript still has to have original content. it's properly cited, and it's kept because an editor may request a copy. So when I get manuscripts and someone says 50% of all water tastes bad, I'm like, says who? Or some other statistic. And I'm reading stuff, and you can tell based on tone, structure, the way something is written, if the writer wrote it or if it's research related. You really can tell. And so the writer is coming across as an authority when they may not have that background. I'm working on a book right now on for kids, and it's on a topic that I don't have expertise in. And so when I'm writing it, I would have to be able to properly cite it. If that was the case, I would have to make sure according to such and such agency or such and such expert. But if I just wrote that, you're like, Lisa, what are you talking about? And so this is really a pet peeve of mine. I see a lot of manuscripts that have no proper citation, that there's no attribution, you don't know who said it, you don't know where it came from, and there are no footnotes or endnotes to indicate that. And I won't get much into that because some projects need footnotes and endnotes, some don't, but either way, you have to be able, your research has to look like it's clear and it's focused and it's properly cited. And if you notice, I say up there also, do not type your scripture, it's not necessary. So bad research will kill your manuscript. For example, it's false news, check your facts. It's old as dirt. We're in 2019. You give me research from 2000. If there's nothing new, you have to tell me there's nothing new. If there's something new, then you need to use it. One effective way to focus your writing is by using an outline. I use outlines with all my children's books because it's required by my publisher, but I found that they're lifesavers, and a good outline will help you to keep your manuscript focused. It serves as a GPS for your content. It aids in your brainstorming. You can easily identify the holes in your manuscript. It helps keep your project fluid, and it definitely combats writer's blocks. Like, you have this outline, you're stumped, you have a deadline, you look at that outline, okay, I'm on chapter 3, I'm supposed to be writing about this, you just start writing. So I encourage people to use outlines because they are effective. So I want to talk about some myths and facts about focus. That these are comments maybe I've had with people or things that I've seen over time. And so one of the myths is that one draft and it's done. A lot of people are talking now about, oh, I wrote a book in 2 days. Oh, I wrote a book in a week. Oh, I wrote a book in a month. And they wrote it and never edited. And so the fact is, rarely is a piece of writing finished after one draft. It's just not going to happen. It's probably not as focused as it could be, and it needs work. Another myth is, if it's clear to me, it's clear enough. And I get that a lot when I ask writers about their material, and they're like, well, it's clear to me. Well, it's not clear to me, and I'm the reader. And if I'm a first reader, and editors sometimes can be your first reader. If I'm a first reader and I don't understand it, who's to say other readers will understand it? So look to see if it's clear. Another myth is, I write for intellectuals, so my phrasing, sentence length, etc. is perfect. So did you just call me dumb? Like, it's not that I don't understand the words, it's just not making sense, and perhaps you need to revise that, because that's just not a good excuse for unfocused writing. Another myth is, only my editor needs to see this. Beginning writers especially need critique partners. Other writers writing across races or across other issues need sensitivity readers, and other first readers who can help you with focus. They're the people who are going to say, I don't understand this, this is not clear, this doesn't make sense. Another myth is, I don't have time to revise. The fact is, revision is a writer's best friend. You want to take time to revise. Another myth we hear a lot, especially when we ask people to revise or perhaps change this, One myth is, if Jesus told me to write this, it's perfect. And Jesus is perfect. My writing, not so much. What about yours? So let's check. When we look at this roadblock or unfocused writing, some things you can do, you just want to make sure is your manuscript holds, are the beginning, middle, and ends clear and focused, is everything theme related. If you can check off all of those, then hey, it's perfect, but it's good to go. It may not be perfect, but it's good to go. And go may not mean to being published. It may go to another editor. So how do you refocus your writing real quickly? You don't overthink it. You rewrite, you rewrite, you rewrite until it's clear. You move something. Sometimes just moving a paragraph, a sentence, a page brings your writing into focus. Also, you can delete something. You add something. Make it simpler. Simple writing is often the most effective writing, and a lot of writers struggle with that because they feel if it's simple, then it's not intellectual. You shorten it. You ask for help. You get somebody who can help. You use editors, etc. So why bother? Why should you take time to focus your writing? And some key reasons, other than readers can't benefit from your writing if it's not published, and it won't be published if you don't clarify your content and work on making it more focused. But once it's all focused and it's looking great, if you're writing for the Christian market, you can share your faith, your Christian worldview. You can minister and help others. Even if you're not writing for the Christian market, you're still sharing wisdom and stuff that can help others. You can spark joy, laughter, healing more based on the purpose and the genre of your writing. You can expand your portfolio because you're going to have more writing opportunities. You're going to have editors coming to you to write articles and manuscripts and books. It helps you build your platform. You reach a larger audience or new audiences. You increase your income because you're making more money from your writing. And if you feel that God has called you to write and you're struggling with your writing, if you restructure your content and you bring it into focus, you can obey God and fulfill the call of God. And you live your dream. You do what God has called you to do. Are there any questions or any of that, Brian? Did anybody have any comments?
Well, first, thank you, Lisa, for all that information. I think that was really very, very helpful and, a great perspective, I think, for folks who haven't been through so many of these as you have. But yes, we do have a question. One is, what is a good word count for a young adult nonfiction book?
So that is hard to answer because it's going to be based on the publisher. And it's going to be based on whether that's a Christian publisher or a non-Christian publisher. So you need to use a writing guideline or go to a publisher's website to determine it. For my nonfiction books, because I'm working with a publisher who has different imprints, some of my books are 8,000 words, some are 12,000, and some are 18,000. So it does vary. So you just need to check a publisher's website or guidelines.
Good. Thanks, Lisa. Here's one. What did you mean about not writing the scripture out?
So please, when you're writing your manuscript, you're typing your manuscript and you're on your computer, do not type the scripture. Go to Bible Gateway or some other respected website and copy and paste. Because one of the things that's often in a lot of manuscripts, scriptures are wrong. Or we think we know what the scripture says, but we really don't. We're working from memory. And so you want to make sure you have the right scripture. You want to have it correct. You want to have the right version. And the easiest and most accurate way to do that is to use a source. In addition, an editor sees any errors in your scriptures, it's sort of a red flag. It kind of makes us a little nervous because we're like, what else could be wrong in this manuscript? That's like an easy thing to do. So don't waste your time. Just copy and paste and put it in that spot.
And I think if I remember correctly, Bible Gateway allows you to choose the Bible version.
It does.
So I would assume you'd want to be consistent with that throughout the book.
Well, it depends. Some publishers want you to limit the different versions you use, but at times you may want to add other versions depending what you're saying. So it varies.
Yeah, no,
but you at least have to say which version it is, so you're correct on that one.
Cool. You want to say a few words about the different types of editing services that you provide, Lisa?
Sure. And so one of the editing services that I often try to get writers to go for, because it's less expensive, is a consultation. Basically we talk. We can do it by video, by, Skype or whatever, or we can do it by the telephone. And we actually spend, you send me a person sends me their manuscript, I review it. I actually look at some of the things that I just discussed, the theme, the focus, is it clear, the structure. And then we get on a call and I discuss some of the issues or with the manuscript. Of course, I discuss what's the good parts first. I'm pretty gentle. So I do consultations. I also do copy editing. I don't do proofreading, because proofreading basically is a basic editing service where someone's just looking at your spelling and if this is right. And I have a hard time doing that, because if there are structural issues there, I can't just ignore that. I don't think that's a service to writers. So I do everything from copy editing to developmental editing, where I can help you actually bring your book in. And I also do ghostwriting.
Wonderful. So here's another question. Is there a certain number of citations you should use for each subject?
Well, I'm not sure if you're talking about a book or an article, but again, you want to make sure that there's a lot of original content in your piece. So whether you're writing an article or book, you don't want 50% to be citations from other sources. I did a ghostwriting project like that many years ago for a Christian leader, and I hated it. I told myself I will never, ever, ever work with anyone who has so much content from other sources, because we could have just read those books. We want to know what God has done in your life, what perspectives you have. And you also, the amount of citations, you also have to be clear that it's fair use versus, to avoid plagiarism, that you're not using too much information from one source. So it varies. And again, some publishers are strict about how much they do or don't want.
That makes a lot of sense. And I'm sure, as you said, varies dramatically depending on the type of book and the audience and the publisher and the topic. So it depends.
it does depend.
All right. Well, Lisa, thank you so much for joining us. I think that our audience will get a great deal of value out of what you just presented. So thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much, Brian. I so appreciate you and all that you do. Thank you to all the viewers now and those who listen to the replay. And if I can give a plug, I'm just going to give a plug for Publishing in Color, because it is a fantastic resource, particularly for writers of color. And Brian is the host. And so check the website, and Writing for Your Life. Those are excellent conferences as well. So check out his work, his conferences. And thank you so much. And I hope to visit with you again one day.
Thanks again, Lisa. I appreciate it. Take care.
Happy writing. Bye now.
Bye, everybody.